Hello everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of the Passionanimator talk show. So today we have a very special guest joining in right away from Germany, and I had been fortunate to work with him in one of a project as an animator. The guest is an animation director. He has been directing animated movies since quite a long time, and I was fortunate to work with him. So today I would like to call him as a guest speaker and share his experience about his story, how he got into animation and direction, and about some things which might help the beginners to approach animation. So let's welcome Anthony Power.
Hey,
Hey,
good to see you, man. How you keeping?
I'm doing great. What about you?
Oh, good, good. I'm
Excellent.
living in Ireland now, so it's a completely different lifestyle to 2 years ago where we were in Berlin. So it's all cool.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Let me try and fix my camera here because my camera, I'm using my son's computer and the
Oh,
camera seems to be zoomed in on me.
it's
I don't want to
fine.
move.
No problem at all.
Okay.
It's been quite a long time. Like I've been working on Captain Sharky and Coconut Dragons.
Yeah, yeah. I had very little. I had very little to do with Captain Sharky. With Captain Sharky, Gabby came to me and asked me would I do a dialogue polish for that one. So she wanted me to fix some of the dialogue. I think that was it. And that was my contribution there. And then on the Coconut series, I wrote on the Coconut series, but then directed the film. So it was nice.
That's been a great experience, like working as an animator on that.
Yeah, it was great. It was actually it was a lovely experience for me because first of all, I'd never been to India before.
Oh,
So that was fantastic. That was just completely mind blowing. But a lot of things are done these days where you don't get to sit with animators anymore, you know? So that was a
yeah,
joy. To be able to sit down and sort of deal with animation as it's being made was lovely. That was great.
yeah, because of this issues now going on, because the way of working has changed now
Yeah, yeah,
a lot.
yeah, yeah. But the thing is, like, I've been working remotely for years, you know? I was working on a film in Hamburg called the Ritter Trank. Is a 2D movie, and I'd been working on the film for maybe about 6 months. So I would leave my house in Berlin on Monday morning, and then not come back until Friday evening. So it was kind of I was away from the family for too long, and I said I can't do this anymore. So I really need to spend a bit more time at home. So then they made it so I worked 3 days in the studio and 2 days at home. And so I was working remotely for 2 days a week, and it went really, really well. So the next time when we started, the next film then was the Coconut movie. So when they asked me to do that film, I was like, I can't move away again because I'd been away for so long for the Ritter Trank movie. So Gabby said, you don't have to move away. You can actually do it all from Berlin and then go to Stuttgart, go to Munich a couple of times, maybe go to India 3 times. And I was like, okay. So for most of the work that was done on Coconut, I did it from my apartment in Berlin. So already I was working remotely before remotely was cool
So,
or necessary. Yeah.
yeah. Thank you so much, first of all, for joining in and for supporting me in this. Uh, I really appreciate it. Uh, I know your schedule has been too busy, and you have taken out your time for just sharing your experience. Thank you so much for that.
It's my pleasure, my friend. Absolutely.
Like, I would like to start with how did you get into this animation? Like, is it from your childhood you were having interest into animation, or like something happened or
Something happened. Something
oh,
happened. I tell you, what happened was I did a test for Sullivan Bluth in Ireland way back in 1988. This was when they were making, I think, The Land Before Time.
mm,
So, and I got the job. I got the job to be an in-betweener. But at the same time, I got a job working with some friends of mine in Cork, and I preferred that job. So I stayed doing that job as a graphic designer slash illustrator, and then eventually, when that job ended, I was actually fired because I refused to do really crappy little design jobs. I wanted to illustrate everything. So I think a friend of mine said, there's a new studio opening in Dublin. We're going to be making the Ninja Turtles. You should check it out. So the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to paint backgrounds. So I got a portfolio together
mm,
and I brought it to the house of the late great Jimmy Murakami. And Jimmy's looking at my paintings, these watercolor things I'd done, and he's kind of going, "Hey, these are nice. These are nice. Yeah, I can see it in backgrounds." And then at the back of the portfolio, I had a ton of sketches that I did, pen and ink drawings and things, just cartoons and stuff. And he goes, "Oh, now this is good." He said, "You're going to be an assistant animator." And I said, "Oh man, I'd rather do backgrounds." And he said, "You're going to be an assistant animator." So that was in 1989. And my first job was an assistant animator on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So that was the first job I had.
great, great.
Yeah. So, and the good thing about that training was they brought over 7 animators from the States who'd already been working on the turtles. So they had guys like they had American guys, they had Korean guys, and they had some Canadians. And I got put with one of the Korean guys, and he was an amazing animator, Andy Kim. And the first scene I had to in between was an explosion. And the secret that he told me for explosions was perspective. He said perspective. And he said perspecto. And I said, what's perspecto? He said, when something is over there, it's really small. And then when it's over here, it's really big. I said, oh, perspective. He said, yeah, perspective. So that was my first job working on that. And then I got to animate on the turtles then. So that was fun as well. So those guys, those original 7 guys trained the first 7 assistants. And then they left, and then the assistants moved up to become animators. And the studio took off then.
Started with 2D animation and then later on
Yeah,
moved on to 3D.
yeah.
So have
I
you
missed that
been
part.
like did you learn 3D animation or directly because of the opportunity you got into 3D stuff?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 2D, like the when even when I remember actually in the mid 90s when things, the late 90s when things started to go digital, like it started to get really freaky then, because there was things like you could do things, in TV stuff before, you could do things like, say, a camera move, and you could do like a nice truck in on something, but then you'd always have to add a dissolve or something
Yeah,
because you couldn't get the details. And then I remember in the late 90s, they said, you can zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in. I remember that like just being a fantastic thing. Anyway, I digress. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent.
to hear that you have been starting as so now you have been working as an animation director since quite a long.
Yeah, that started, I think, around 1996, maybe. It could have been 95 as well. What happened was I was working in a studio, and a friend of mine who was the director quit. So they asked me and another guy to take over as directors, two guys who'd never directed before. And I was going to look after animation. This other guy was going to look after the layout. And then the layout guy, then he quit. And then all of a sudden I was the sole director of the series. So that was a bit freaky. So it was a case of real case of learning on the job, you know. I had a very good mentor in Garrett Hand. Like, I mean, he was there for me all the time and stuff, and he was actually a great teacher. But I was in a studio on my own in Cologne. You know, we had a crew of people in Cologne, and the main studio was in Berlin. That's where Garrett was. But you know, sometimes he'd visit, and we sort of talk about stuff, and he'd show me things and tell me where I was going wrong, where I was going right. But yeah, so since '96, I think I've been directing animation. Yeah,
So, like, what do you think? Like, how important is it to have a mentor?
it's great. It really is. You see, in studios back then, especially if there were studios where where you're actually creating stuff, where not just pre-production, but you're doing production. There's always going to be people in the studio that are so much better than you are, and you can learn so much from those people.
Yeah,
But you have to actually sort of find the right person as well. You know, you could. I know a guy who's actually like a really, really strong animator and stuff, but he's useless when it comes to showing people things.
yeah, yeah,
He just and it's a case. It's not a case of like him not wanting. Yeah, it's not a case of him not being able to do it. He just doesn't want to. He just
yeah,
doesn't have the time. Just like you know, that sort of attitude.
yeah,
But it's always good to have somebody that you can kind of latch onto and someone that can teach you things. Always. And for me, I stayed in hand film. Oh God, 10 years, 14 years. I can't remember because it was a brief period where I wasn't there. And at the time, I thought that Garrett Hand was like one of the best animation directors in Europe. When this guy was focused on something like 100% and really kind of working on something, then it always turned out fantastic. So and he was great at telling you kind of the things that you were doing wrong, you know. And I think that's a brilliant thing. If everything you did just kind of worked out, I don't think you'd really learn anything, you know. I think you learn so much more from your mistakes, like
yeah.
so much more.
There has to be somebody who can guide you in the proper direction.
Yeah, yeah,
Mentor, yeah. That is why I also felt like, because I also felt like there are so many animators who are great animators, but like that's what you said, they have an attitude of, oh, I don't want. So
yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah, they don't have that attitude of sharing the knowledge, and
yeah,
that is the main reason. Like I'm focusing on that. That is why I started mentoring beginners so that they can get a better idea about how to approach animation, because that
yeah,
is what I know how it is done in the industry. Like I have worked since 7 to 8 years, so now I know what is the process, how it is done in the studio, like how you take
yeah,
it to the next level, what are the kind of
yeah,
corrections you get. So
yeah,
now, absolutely, I can help beginners to have a proper direction.
yeah. Because I think there's a mistake as well that I know I did it myself when I started animation. You have a scene, and in this scene, this guy has to, you know, he has to point and say stop or whatever, you know, stop, hey, you stop, whatever, you know, something like this. And you could just animate that, just a guy, okay, you stop, whatever. And that's the scene animated. But I think every animator has to kind of ask themselves, like, you know, what's going through the guy's head at the time?
Absolutely.
What's what what are the in between actions, you know, like say, you know, if someone is talking, you know, there can be like a little head tilt or a squint of the eyes or something to accent an important piece of dialogue, or to give a bit more emotion to the scene. Like there's a lot of stuff in there that you have to learn this stuff. Like when I think I don't know what it was like when like when you animate your first scene. Like what's the thought process that goes through your head, if you're not actually given like proper direction, if you're just given the scene, okay, there's your scene, this guy has to point and shout. Like, what is the thought process that goes
Yeah,
on? And I don't think you actually have that at the start at all.
yeah, that is what they lack. That is the knowledge they lack, that they don't know that the main important thing before doing animation is to think what the character is thinking.
Yeah. And I'll tell you something actually, just to kind of just there's a little story. I was working in London on the Thief and the Cobbler, the Richard Williams film, and I was an assistant animator. So every now and again, Dick would give some scenes to assistant animators just to see what they could do with it. And there's one scene in the film, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's a beautiful looking scene. And the thief he's about to have his hands chopped off for stealing. So at one stage, they cut to the audience, to the crowd of people. Now, all the crowd of people, they're just supposed to be watching. That's it. Just watching and seeing what's going on. Curious, I think is what they're doing. But because the animator wanted to show how good he was or how great he was, there's all these things like where there's a guy in the crowd. One guy does this, someone else goes, someone else looks around. So every single character in the crowd is doing something, and every single character is animated beautifully. But it's not. It's for that scene. It's the completely wrong thing, because you're just looking, going, what am I supposed to be looking at here?
Yeah.
It's just loads of beautiful animation. So there's a tendency as well to kind of, when you get your first scene, to kind of get all your stuff in there, try and show off everything you can do.
Mhm.
Instead, some scenes have to be really downplayed. They have to be, it could be it could be a 2-second scene, and it could be just a blink. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, you don't need all that and then a blink. You don't need anything. It's
yeah,
just like some clearing and then blinking.
like the primary action should be more visible rather than just creating disturbances in the crowd scene.
Yeah, yeah. Now, as I said, that scene, and it's still in the film, and the animator is a lovely guy as well. He's a really nice guy, and but the animation is, like I said, it's absolutely beautiful. But there's so much of it; it's all over the place. You know what I mean? Anyway,
And now, what movie, like, would you like to share what kind of projects you are working on now?
um, I don't know if I can talk. I suppose I can talk
Okay.
about it. It's not. We finished a pilot there a while ago, and um, it's beautiful looking. It's very nice, and it's a wonderful story. And the first film I ever directed was called Abrafax Under the Black Flag, and it was about three kids who go back in time, and they wind up with pirates and Spanish Armada, and they have to get back together and come back to their own time, back to the 20th century. So those characters were based on an East German comic called the Digadags. And a friend I know, a guy I know in Berlin, he partnered up with a guy who just got the rights for the Digadags, and now they want to make a TV series from that. So we worked really hard on making a really nice animatic for uh, for the series. Um, we're rethinking some things about it. Some things have to be changed, just about the overall story of the thing. So we're hoping that that's going to get picked up. That's actually, but that's like a really beautifully designed series as well. Like looks really nice. I can't remember the name of the designer, but um, you know the Netflix movie Klaus.
Yeah.
One of the designers from that film designed the characters for this thing as well. So it has like it's a beautiful
You-
looking.
You're talking about the 2D movie that is Klaus?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a beautiful film. But the one of the designers from that, and I can't remember the person's name at the moment, was the designer for this thing, the Digadags, and it's and really really nice. So hopefully that gets picked up. And there's another series, another couple of series I did some pilots for last year. Um, really nice shows as well. A CG show, and it's but it's a preschool show. You know, preschool kind of it's nice. It can be nice, but it can get a bit boring sometimes. So
Yeah.
we this show is kind of a little bit more exciting than your standard preschool show.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm also trying to get something off the ground myself. So I won't say anything about that for now, but
Yeah.
maybe I'll sometime.
I just wanted to know that how is the process of getting into a job in other country? Like, suppose if I want to get into in your country as an animator, like, so then what would be the process, or what is the main thing they look into it?
I think it's the same as it always has been, really, because everybody's always going to be looking for a good show reel. You know, if you can put together a decent animation show reel that shows your abilities, then it's you know that's just it. And then there'll be a job anywhere for you,
But
really. You know.
is there anything related to certification? Like, is there any way certification is necessary, or some kind of an degree or whatever? Like, I'm talking about animation.
Yeah, I don't know really. I wouldn't expect it, to be honest with you. I think if the hardest part is coming in as an unexperienced
Yeah.
worker,
Mm.
because you know back when I started, I I, I started on with six other assistant animators, and every one of those had experience in animation before. They'd either worked on something or they studied something, and I came straight from a graphic design background. So I had no experience whatsoever. So I learned on the job. I think for the first, you know, in animation, you have to flip the paper so you can, you know, when you're looking at your drawings, you have to flip between one drawing and another drawing. And I found it so hard to do. For the first week, I had another assistant actually flip my drawings for me until I could actually get a handle on it properly. Like it was really embarrassing, you know. Um, but back then it was way different. Now it's a case. I think it is a case of just having like that good portfolio, really. You know, having that good show reel. Of course, it's always good if you know somebody. You know that helps an
Yeah.
awful lot.
Yeah. That's it.
But you know you and the thing about show reels as well, like I mean, you just want to show what you can do, you know, put the best of your stuff on. If something is kind of halfway there and you're not happy with it, don't put it on a show reel just because it makes the show reel longer. So you have
Yeah.
different things in,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, for coming in from abroad, I think it literally is a case of just getting a show reel together.
Then if I talk about like the direction, like you have been directing animated movies since quite a long. So like what what is that one project? Which is that one project like which you feel most connected to, or you had a great experience working on that project because of some
Um,
reason?
there's been a few, to be honest. Um, Most recently, there's been the coconut movie that we worked on together.
Yeah,
That was like just a fantastic experience right from the start because um, I got to rewrite the script on that one. So I managed to get a lot of my own stuff in there, which was really nice. And then just loved the whole animation process of that film. I just loved it. I loved going to India, working with you guys and stuff was just like an amazing experience. And I said it to like different friends and stuff. I said, once I landed in Mumbai, a peace came over me. I said, like, Mumbai it's a good place for the soul. I always said that. Uh, Except for the third time I went, I got very, very sick. So that one wasn't so good. But that was just an amazing experience just because um, I was right there at the start. I wrote the script and then it was right up until the very end, and that was a joy. Um, th- Another one that I just have so much fond memories of because it was the first job I had was working on the Ninja Turtles. It was just fantastic experience with like fantastic people who are still friends to this day, years and years later. Um, and what was lovely about that was like, animating for the first time, seeing your first scenes come up in color on the screen was just mind blowing. Couldn't believe it. Seeing the first scene I ever worked on, which was this explosion that Andy Kim animated. And I can't remember how many days I spent in betweening these drawings of a building blowing up and loads of smoke coming out and bellowing and flying all over the place. And then I saw it on the screen and it lasted like 2.5 seconds or something. And then it was gone. I was like, that was it? All my work? It? Um, but that working on the turtles was it didn't even feel like work. It just felt like fun, you know? That was great.
so
I
now
suppose I suppose I have to as well say that I when I worked in London on The Thief and the Cobbler was a brilliant experience as well because I was working with the best animators in the world at that stage. There was two studios in London. There was Universal Studios making the Land Before Time, and then you had Richard Williams Studio making the Thief and the Cobbler, which was so we had in London at that time, there was like just a wealth of animation talent. It was just fantastic. There still is a wealth of animation talent in London, but back then, we knew everybody. It was brilliant. It was such a great experience.
so do you like in terms of uh, your time management, if I talk about like generally if we see animation, if we start doing animation, then like sometimes it gets quite a lot hectic, like not able to finish the shots and then not able to go home. So if I talk about you, then how do you manage the stuff? Like, is it like cool? Is it like everything fine, or is it too much hectic of the work?
It's Look, with everything, I can even say, even with the Coconut movie, which I found to be a very, very smooth experience, like really smooth. It still got really hectic at the end.
Yeah,
It will always get hectic. That's never going to stop, And at when you see the first scenes and you're trying to get a level of animation down, so you go, okay, this is the standard of animation that we want for this movie. So the first scenes, you're very, very critical of the first scenes because you want you want to have the characters' attitudes right. You want to have every little characteristic they have has to be right, so that and then we can match that for the rest of the movie. So I remember at the start, the first scenes in Coconut was that we saw were the scenes where Coconut is putting on his bag and he's talking to his parents about the trip that they're going to make.
Yeah.
And I remember being so critical about some of these scenes, getting them perfect and perfect and more perfect. And then as the film goes on, you start looking at the deadline and you go, okay, sometimes you have to look at a scene and go, that's good enough. You know what I mean? Obviously, there's big emotional scenes or big dramatic scenes that have to look, they have to be right. So you have to be that little bit more critical with those scenes and stuff. But then there's the basic meat and potato scenes, as we say. Just your basic scenes where continuity scenes and things, where if you look at it and kind of, that guy, if only he did that, it would be perfect. But then you have to look at the deadline and go, we have to get this stuff out of here. Because we made that film pretty quick. The animation deadline was really short on that movie. Like it was just so quick. So yeah, at some stage you have to kind of have a point where you go, okay, that's good enough.
Like in terms of acting, if you want to suggest something, some kind of tips or whatever you call suggestion, like to take care about when you do an acting shot, what would that be?
Um, well, if it's I don't know if you remember this, but for the Coconut movie, I did video notes
Yeah.
for every single scene, I think. In some scenes, the video note would just be, um, okay, just follow the storyboard posing. And I would explain what happens in the scene and say, just follow the storyboard posing. Everybody's running away from something, follow the storyboard posing. It's very simple. But then when it would get to a scene where there's some acting, I would literally act out the whole scene. So you could have like 6 characters in the scene, and I would start off by saying, okay, Coconut comes in, and then he stops, he looks, and then he says his little bit of dialogue, blah, 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 blah. And then I would even do the accents. So if he's saying, hey, Oscar, what are you doing? Kind of, hey, Oscar, what are you doing? So I would do all of that, much wider, of course, so the actor could see my hands and things. And then send that to you guys in India and say, this is the animation reference that you have for this scene. It's basically a guy in his mid 50s pretending to be a 10-year-old kid, you know? And so I did that for every single scene. The only scene I didn't do any video reference for was the song. And I had my boy Aaron actually do some dancing, and then I sent that dancing to you guys as reference, and that was really funny to see. So I'm a firm believer in video notes and really acting out the scene and stuff, because that way as well you have a lot more control over how the character is treated on screen. Like one of the characters might have something where, when they're curious, they might tilt their head, lean a little forward. That's their way of reacting to something. So, in the video notes, you could keep control of that. This is how Oscar would look in this scene. This is what Oscar would say in the scene, or how he would say something. So yeah, video notes are definitely what I recommend anyone.
So much. Any more suggestions you would like to give it from your end?
Um, no, I won't say suggestions. I would say that, if you're starting as an animator, really try and enjoy it. Really enjoy it, because I remember, like, I mean, our work when we started animating, our work finished at 6 o'clock, and then we would stay in the studio for another 3 or 4 hours practicing animation, and line testing everything and seeing how everything worked, and trying to basically teaching ourselves as well as having other people teach us. Um, because if you think about it, it's a fun job. It really is a fun job, you know. So I know people who are kind of really serious about it, and they're never happy until, like, they see the final thing up on the screen, and but enjoy the process, enjoy the whole process of doing it and stuff. It's great. um I think that's it. I know I'll probably think of something after we hang up here now, but there's a great book. There's a great book that Richard Williams wrote. It's an animation reference book. Highly recommend that. There's tons of like great books out there, but this was a book kind of, because it's very near and dear to me, because I was at his lectures, and I everything in the lectures are in those books, or is in that book, and it's a great book. But yeah, I have no real look. There's been some amazing work done in the past, like way in the past, and so learn from the old guys, learn from the masters, like from years and years ago. That's what I would suggest.
So much for your time. It's been really great talking to you.
It's been lovely
I
talking to you, Naresh. Yeah, it's been fantastic. Nice to see you again after all this time.
Nice to see you too. I
Yeah,
was thinking like might be you might be busy, or you might say yes or no. You might be having a hectic schedule. Like I asked so many people, but like as into animation industry, most of the people were busy into the deadlines. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought that you also might be busy. But then
I'm
you turned
I'm
up.
I'm I'm never too busy for you. How's that?
Thank you so
Like it,
much for that.
it's been a pleasure. It's been really nice. Thanks for listening to me.
You have been good. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for joining in and sharing your thoughts on animation. And I hope that we'll meet soon. And
yeah,
I also hope that you come to India again.
yeah. Me too. Me too. It's too long, man. Too long.
Okay.
Next
Thanks.
time, next time will be a holiday, I think, but we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. We meet there.
All right.
Okay.
Take care, Naresh.
Take care. Thank
All
you.
right. Cheers,
Bye
my
bye.
friend. Bye bye. Bye bye.